Nonetheless, the department is committed to declassifying and publicly sharing more information on UAP.
I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. But what I do have are a very particular set of skills. Skills I've acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you. If you tell the people what you know about UAP, I will look for you. I will find you. And I will kill you.
While our government's official position is not to speculate on this subject, we can choose to let our minds explore other possibilities, to use our imaginations. For if we consider that astroscientists agree on one point, that the possibility of life elsewhere is not only quite probable, some feel it is there without a doubt. Let us suppose then that these objects are real space vehicles, extraterrestrial in origin, and not an illusion of the mind.
There's nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide at all.
Nothing to hide at all, huh? We'll see. We'll see, guys. We're going to be talking all about the SOL Foundation Symposium that happened this weekend with someone who was there on site. The one and only Suzanne Landers, our incredible moderator in the chat, was there all weekend, and she is going to give us the inside scoop on everything that went down at the event, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. I can't wait to discuss that with her later in the show. But first, we are going to get to the latest UFO headlines that have hit the news waves this past week and maybe the week before. I might be a little behind on some of these stories, but you know me. Like, I'm always doing something, so I get a little behind when it comes to all this stuff, but we will cover it all nonetheless. But before we do that, guys, welcome to Somewhere in the Live Stream. I am your host, Ryan Sprague. I am also the host of the Somewhere in the Skies podcast. If you are new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button, like this video, and join us as we break down all the latest UFO news. We do this live stream every Sunday, almost every Sunday, as much as we possibly can. And yeah, we cover everything. UAP related, space related, technology, you name it, we try to discuss it if it has something to do with those pesky things in our skies. I'm pointing at a UFO if you're just listening to this. Thank you to Grant Levac for that hilarious intro video that he made of that mysterious, enigmatic person that was behind John Kozlowski at the AARO Senate UAP hearing. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I do want to say hello to a bunch of our regulars in the chat tonight. I see J. Allen Heineken, the biologist. Dalen is here. Hi, guys. Welcome, welcome. Excuse me. Johan Rosenberg is here. Mario Woods, hello. Hello. Really good to see you, Mario. Thank you for your service, as always, my friend. We have C. Kenzo joining us over on Twitch. Welcome. Spooky Boo is here. Space Today, hello from New Jersey. Donnie Falls, Michael Huntington, Pat Gallagher, Henry is here. And I think that is it. Oh, hello to our new people. Jeffrey Tomlin is here. Joseph is here. Jim is here. Ooh, they just keep, the hits keep coming. Welcome, guys. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I do want to let you guys know that our super chat and super stickers are open tonight to help support our new microphone fund. You can kind of see our little measly microphone I've got over here. This thing is about, I want to say, 7 years old at this point. I had to dig it out of storage because our amazing Shure microphone, may she rest in peace, I lost her in the travel back from Canada. But fear not, because with the help of wonderful people like Suzanne, our incredible moderator, we are getting ever so much closer to being able to get a brand new microphone for the show. So if you want to help, you can do that in the super chat tonight, or we have a PayPal, we have a buy me a coffee, QR codes up on the screen, links in the show notes, all that good stuff. No more begging for money. Let's get to the good stuff. Let's get to the good stuff. Hello to Martin. Hello from Denmark. Wow. Welcome, welcome, welcome. That's so cool. Spooky Boo with a $20 super chat for beer or a microphone, you choose. Well, my friend, Spooky Boo, I'm going with Centauri whiskey straight from Japan tonight. So no beer. So that's going to go to the microphone fund. I'm good on the alcohol. Ooh, that is good. Nice and smooth. I got this little guy when I was in Japan, which I will be going back to Japan in January. So we'll have to see what's going to happen with the live stream. Then I think I'm like a day ahead of pretty much the rest of the world when I go there, but I will let you guys know when that happens. Am I forgetting anything else before we get to the news? Oh, yes. I just got this amazing book in the mail, UFOs Who Knows. This is a brand new book by Ryan Wood and Anthony DiLorenzo. Anthony, you guys might remember, randomly came on the live stream a while back after I found him on YouTube. He was doing some awesome videos. I had him come on the show. Got to get him back on. Really knowledgeable guy. He's a history professor, I believe, and just knows a heck of a lot about UFOs. And this was so cool that I saw that he came out with a book, and he actually sent this to me for free. So I want to thank Anthony for that. We will have Anthony and Ryan Wood on the show to talk all about this book in the future, but I want you guys to go get the book so you can be ready for that interview and ask your listener questions. So look it up, UFOs Who Knows. It's so cool. Like, it's literally, you turn to a page and it just is about people and what they have said about UFOs and what knowledge they might possess on the topic. I mean, it's everything from government people to celebrities, people in the UFO research community, politicians. Yeah, it's just really cool. Jackie Gleason, there you go. That's some deep UFO lore for you guys, if you know Jackie Gleason's connection to UFOs. So yeah, again, be sure to check this book out. And we will have Anthony and Ryan Wood on the show soon to talk all about it. Sacrilegious Japanese whiskey, Joseph, my friend. I have to tell you, Japanese whiskey is some of the best whiskey I have ever had. I cannot recommend it enough. Get your hands on it if you can. It'll change your life. I swear. This is coming from a guy who lives in Scotland and drinks scotch. So, yeah. Just go through the chat here again, guys, before we get to the news. Hello to Ruth Bradford. Good to see you as always. Welcome, welcome. Good morning, UFO is here. Hi, Amy. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the $5 super sticker. Guys, if you are not subscribed to Good Morning UFO, please go do that right now. Amy puts in so much work, so much effort. I love waking up and watching her streams. She does them so early. I don't know how she does it, but she is literally the first one to get you the latest UFO news pretty much every morning. And luckily for me, I live in the UK, so it's a little later in the day when she starts, and I've already had my coffee and whatnot. But yeah, she does wonderful, wonderful work. She did some great coverage of the UFO hearings recently. So again, I highly suggest going over there, hitting like, hit subscribe, and show Amy some love. And we're sending it right back to you, Ames. Thanks for being here. Hello to Nisa as well. And yeah, let's do it, guys. What do you say? Let's get to some UFO news. We're going to start with a story that comes from here, right in the UK, actually. That looks like some good stuff, huh? Very different climates, if you will. I feel like a travel agent, which the story kind of has to do with, to be completely honest. I'll get back on the screen here. So this story comes to us from the Daily Star, the highly reputable, ever so credible Daily Star here in the UK. Oh, man. But it's a fun one. It's a fun one. So stick with me here. Alien-obsessed Brits choose holiday destinations in the hope of seeing a UFO. So apparently people in the UK are now planning their travel and their vacations around UFO hotspots. This is so cool. So this article, like I said, comes from the Daily Star. I'm going to quote a little bit from here. 1 in 5 Brits pick holiday destinations in the hope of seeing a UFO. Travel agents say that ET hotspots worldwide are rocketing in popularity. A new poll has revealed 28% of Brits believe in aliens. 1 in 5 claim to have already seen a UFO. A quarter admit that they are more likely to visit destinations known for close encounters, while 1 in 5 say they are, quote, eager to explore UFO hotspots this upcoming year. Online travel operator Apodo has identified 35 of the world's leading UFO hotspots to offer alien hunters the chance to combine stunning natural beauty with the history of UFO sightings. Excuse me. The number one destination that Brits have picked is the Valley of Fire in Nevada. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you're seeing the photo on the left here, the more I guess nice deserty sort of landscape right there, and that is the Valley of Fire in the US in Nevada, where there have been 18 official UFO sightings reported. Most are described as, quote, fireballs and are typically orange or green. Apodo says the state park gives an ET feel with its vibrant hues of red and orange, along with the unique rock formations, creating an otherworldly atmosphere reminiscent of Mercury's rugged terrain. So there you go. There's number one destination for British people in the US for UFOs. It was followed closely by Death Valley in California, which boasts 17 sightings reported, most of which were oval craft. Interesting. What's with California and these oval tic tac things? I don't know. Could it be those secret bases Big Danny Sheehan's always talking about? Him and his golden domes? Could be. All right. Our next location that Brits want to visit, bear with me here. The Vatnajökull, I hope I said that right, Vatnajökull Glacier in Iceland, which boasts 14 reported UFO sightings, most of which are reported as solid craft. Renowned for its exceptional stargazing conditions, visitors can experience breathtaking displays of the northern lights and, on clear nights without auroras, views of the Milky Way. So again, if you're watching this on YouTube, that's the more glacial image you're seeing there. God, that looks gorgeous. I can't even imagine what that must be like. Suzanne and I were talking last week off air about Iceland. She was telling me I gotta go visit there. Well, now I might. Now that I know it's a UFO hotspot, that's for sure. Let's see. An Apodo spokesman said, over the past few years, there's been a huge surge in interest in the ET topic, which has been driven by a combination of recent government disclosures and technological advancements. The tour operator polled 1,500 UK holidaymakers in a bid to understand the growing interest in UFOs. The survey revealed that 28% of respondents believe in aliens. 1 in 5 state they've seen a UFO, with this number soaring to 1 in 3 for those under 34 years old. 1 in 5 holidaymakers are eager to explore UFO hotspots this year, and a third of people believe they will be able to holiday in space within their lifetime, with 11% jumping at the opportunity. The planets they would be most interested in visiting include Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter. All right, UK people. Which planet would you guys want to visit if you had the chance? Let me know in the comments below. I'd really like to know. What destination as well would you like to go to? I saw Michael Huntington in the chat. If there's anyone who knows about UFO hotspots, it is that man. So he is the one to go to. Guys, I'm going to be honest. He will be your UFO travel guide, your UFO Sherpa, as it were. Let me see. Hello to Zutiaks over on Twitch. Welcome, welcome. I do want to say hello to our Twitch members. I always forget to say hi to you guys over there. I'm so sorry. I'm getting used to it. Twitch, Discord, which we have getting going. I promise. Hides and Longgrass is going to kill me. But we will have that up and going very soon. They're putting the final touches on everything. I'm just saying that. It's me. I'm the one being lazy. UFO Sherpa, Michael says. I hope that's all right, man. I'm putting you in charge. Hello to Repost as well. Nairubu Henry wants to go to. Cool. Not the moon away. There are UFOs everywhere up there. And think a war. Up in the moon? Interesting. Interesting, Tets. Repost says not Uranus. I'd give some of Saturn's moons a go. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. I want to visit Beit Tazad. I could talk forever in Lawak. Pat, I have no idea what's going on there. What? That was alien to me, buddy. That was all alien to me. Oh, man. I'm on one tonight. Good luck later, Suzanne. This is going to be a fun one. Hello, Sitzers. Gareth is here. Welcome, Gareth. Always good to see you, my friend. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Cool. So that is our first fun story, guys. Let's move to another interesting story that just broke over at The Debrief by the one and only Chrissy Newton, who will be joining us very soon, guys. I promise. She had a little event she had to go to and cover for The Debrief this weekend. That's right, the SOL Foundation Symposium, where we will be getting the entire inside scoop later in the show. So stick around as well for that, guys. This story comes to us from The Debrief. Canadian MP Larry Maguire urges Canadians to sign UAP transparency petition. This is pretty cool, guys. And before we go any further, I did put a link to this petition in the show notes, so you can go ahead and click on that link if you live in Canada. So if you're Canadian, I did try to do it earlier, and they wouldn't let my UK living US citizen ass do it, unfortunately. But if you do live in Canada, you can go ahead and sign this petition right now. I'll give you a little bit of a background on what it is. A new petition is urging the Canadian government to establish a national task force and standardize protocols for UAP investigations. Sound familiar? This will advocate for transparency, public trust, and international collaboration. Conservative Party member Larry Maguire recently published a petition on the Canadian Parliament of Canada House of Commons Chamber website, asking Canadians to sign a UAP transparency petition before January 19th. So you guys got a little time to sign the petition. Last time I checked, I think it was up to like 200 signatures. So we got to get on that. Guys, share this with any of your Canadian friends, colleagues, significant others, whatever, you name it. If they're Canadian, get them on this thing. Labeled as E5178, National Defense and Military Operations, and initiated by Benjamin Bruce Schofield from Winnipeg, Manitoba, the petition sponsored by Maguire establishes the grounds for why they are asking Canadians to take action. These include recent discussions about unidentified aerial phenomena, highlight the need for a coordinated and transparent approach in Canada, and how UAP-related information is scattered across departments, leading to inconsistent responses. The petition also argues that Canadian allies, like the United States, have made significant strides with dedicated offices and public reporting mechanisms, and Canada could benefit from similar efforts to enhance national security, public safety, and scientific understanding. That last part being the most important, in my personal opinion. Hence the Sky Canada project. The petition also calls for active engagement in international collaborations for UAP research and study, leveraging collective expertise and data from allied nations to better understand these phenomena. And then I'm going to read this quote from Larry himself. This was a quote that he gave to Chrissy Newton over at the debrief, and he wants all of us to know that, quote, stigma has always played a role in limiting the advancement of important research on the UAP topic. As more and more reputable individuals come forward and share what they know, such as the recent congressional hearings in the US, the public will have more opportunities to engage with the facts and consider how they might view this issue. In Canada, this will hopefully include recommendations from the Chief Science Advisor's upcoming Sky Canada project. Transparency is important to all of us. We should expect our public institutions to coordinate with one another and be transparent with the public in general, but especially when we're talking about UAP reports in our skies. By making information publicly available, it will help scientists and researchers analyze the data and cross-reference it with other open source material. A scientific plan and adopting best practices within government are important for building public trust. So there you go, guys. I'm wishing Canada all the best for that, because if there's anything I know about the US, it's that we have no trust whatsoever in our government, especially when it comes to the UAP topic. There are people trying to strive for that, but it's tough. So I think this is great. I think this is awesome. I'm wishing Larry all the best with it. I'm really looking forward to any cooperation with the Sky Canada project over there as well. So yeah, all the power to them. Sign that petition in the show notes below. And Suzanne did post a link as well, guys. So yeah, be sure to check that out. Duncan said, US and Canada should be lockstep on UFOs. Yeah, for sure. I do agree with that. Hello to James Craig. Welcome, my friend, as always. You guys are throwing out your UFO hotspot destinations. I love it. Hello to Richard as well. Welcome. Robert Chafee is here. Welcome as well. Who's ready to get Kozlowski'd? Again. Can't get rid of the man, can we? No, we cannot. This is a little meme I made after the recent Senate UAP hearing when we discovered that the enigmatic woman in the background breathing over John Kozlowski's shoulder was the one, the only Susan Goff, the spokesperson for the Pentagon when it comes to the UAP topic. She has been basically the Darth Vader of UFO bros and UFO disclosure peeps for the past, 5-6 years now at this point. And this was interesting. She made herself very visible at the recent Senate UAP hearing that took place last week with Kirsten Gillibrand and the new head of AARO, John Kozlowski. And yeah, I thought this is a fun little meme to put together for you guys. But the reason that I'm bringing up the Senate UAP hearing again is because at the event, we didn't really get to break this down too much afterwards, but John brought forward 3 really interesting UAP cases that remain unsolved with AARO. Now, they did present their findings for things like the Go Fast UFO video, the Aguadilla, Puerto Rico airport video as well, which is interesting. I did have Robert Powell on the show this week. That interview will be dropping in the next few hours for you guys on the main feed of the podcast, where we sort of discuss the findings about the Aguadilla, Puerto Rico case, because while AARO has their determination, the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, of which Robert Powell is the founder of, they have like a 300-page report that they did on the Aguadilla case as well. So we do talk about that in the interview. It was very interesting. I highly suggest you guys listen to that interview when it drops in just a few hours. But yeah, they came to some conclusions on those 2 videos. But then John talked about some cases that Susie Goff probably wasn't too happy about and shot him the laser eyes, but they were interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and play a video about those 3 anomalous, unexplained cases that John talked about. And yeah, we'll talk a little bit about them on the other side as we race towards our coverage of the SOL Foundation Symposium with Suzanne. But give this a watch, guys, and I'll see you on the other side.
3 cases that merit analysis that we're working on right now. One we might be in the process of resolving, but nonetheless is still interesting. The first one was brought to us by a law enforcement officer out west, where he observed a large orange orb floating several hundred feet above the ground a couple miles away. He went to investigate what was going on with that orb. And as he was pulling up to the location where he thought would be below the orb, about 40 to 60 meters away from some object, the area was well lit. He saw a blacker than black object. He said it was about the size of a Prius, 4 to 6 feet wide. And as he got 40 to 60 meters away from the object, it tilted up about 45 degrees, and then it shot up vertically. He says 10 to 100 times faster than any drone he's ever seen before. And it did that without making a sound, as far as he could tell from inside of his vehicle. And just as it left his field of view through his windshield, then it emitted very bright red and blue lights that illuminated the inside of his vehicle as brightly as if someone had set off fireworks just outside of his vehicle or street flares. So that's anomalous because of the size of the vehicle with the great acceleration. And when he came back to investigate that area, he found no disturbance of the ground beneath it. So that's one interesting one. Another one comes to us from Southeast US. There was a US facility where 2 cars of government contractors were leaving the facility around 9 o'clock in the morning. They looked up in the sky and saw a large metallic cylinder about the size of a commercial airplane, and it was stationary. They observed that there was a very bright white light behind or around the object. They saw it stationary for 15 to 20 seconds, and then it disappeared. Obviously, an object that large, stationary, unless it's a blimp, is unusual, but then disappearing, we can't explain how that would happen. And then the last case was interesting. We had a aircraft that was flying parallel to another aircraft, and it was capturing imagery of it, and a small looking object appeared to fly between the 2 of them much faster than them. Through very careful analysis, we think that the object might have actually been further away than the object that it was videotaping, but it requires very careful analysis to come to those conclusions, and we don't have the metadata to support that yet.
I love how he gets that in there at the end there. But hey, again, like hearing this guy say, we cannot explain this. This is why it's anomalous. That's more than we ever got from the last director. So I think it's awesome. Again, like I know we joke and say stuff about Susan Goff, but like I have interacted with her on several occasions, and she's been nothing but nice and accommodating to me when going to the Pentagon for quotes for articles that I've written in the past. But I get it. Like this woman literally wrote papers on like psyops, psychological warfare within the intelligence community. So I understand the hesitancy and the fact that she was so present during this thing, like right behind him, staring not just at John. Dan Zetterstrom and Andy McGrillen brought this up on their breakdown of the UFO hearing. There were times where she looked directly into the camera, into our souls. And I feel like that was her, like, keeping an eye on every one of us UFOers, UAPers, and being like, okay, we're gonna throw the line out there, give you some anomalous stuff, but that's not what this is about. I don't know. Sue hypnotized Ryan. Susan Goff is my UFO guru. I'm glad we can laugh about this. So yeah, 3 unexplained cases. Law enforcement officer saw a large orange orb and saw another object that was black, and the black object shot off at an incredible speed with no sound. Awesome. Second one, 2 cars full of government contractors saw a stationary, metallic, cylindrical floating object in the air and it disappeared. They could not explain how it disappeared. Third one, small looking object flew between 2 aircraft. So yes, threat to air safety, 100%, absolutely. Anomalous, 100%, absolutely. So exciting. I thought it would be cool to highlight those. You know, a lot of people said that hearing was nothing, that there was a nothing burger. Oh God, I freaking hate that term. Stop using nothing burger, guys. It's not witty. It's not funny. It's so overused. And a nothing burger would taste terrible. Why would you ever order a nothing burger? That's like ordering 2 buns at McDonald's. Stop. Just stop using it. And please stop saying there's a there. This is Ryan's rant. Stop with the nothing burger and stop saying there's a there. Just don't do it. It's so over. You're not going to make fetch happen. Okay? The fact that we're having hearings is immense, Duncan says. Agreed. Michael. Stop saying buckle up too. Agreed. Buckle up, guys. Your curiosity might be weaponized. All right. Let's move to our next story. And I can't believe I'm showing these 2 faces on my screen, but I gotta. So if you guys aren't familiar with these 2, I'm not going to call them gentlemen because they are anything but. These 2 Neanderthals, I think that's a better term to use for them, are Logan Paul and Jake Paul. These dudes got their start on YouTube. YouTubers, very rich, very famous for all the wrong reasons. But Logan Paul is best known now as I think he did some MMA fighting, but he also is a WWE wrestler. And as you guys know, I have a wrestling podcast. I'm obsessed with WWE. We're on episode 40 of that podcast. So if you're not subscribed, please go subscribe to the Somewhere in the Ring podcast and check out what we're doing over there. Me and my good buddy, Andrew Sanford. Anyways, to get back to this, Logan Paul is one of the best wrestlers out there today. Just that's a fact. His brother, many of you know, Jake Paul, is the one who recently fought Mike Tyson and won. So that happened. But these 2 guys, 2 brothers, were on a podcast recently. I think it was Jake Paul's podcast. And they were chatting all about the Mike Tyson fight and Prime Energy drink and all the crap that they do. But the topic of UFOs came up. And I thought this was pretty interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and play this clip. And we'll see what it has to do with the UAP Disclosure Fund. So give this a watch, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Notably, right now, there's a UAP fund.
Oh, wow.
That is like vowing to fund and protect whistleblowers who come forward from being like sued or tried to be like bullied by the United States government. Because right now, there's people inside of these programs that are trying to reverse engineer the crafts or have seen or heard things or spoken with witnesses or even like have video footage themselves who are in the community staying silent because either they're committed to their project, which is cool, but I think they have a bigger commitment to the United States people. Yeah. And I think more people are going to realize that and come forward with really important information, but they're also likely going against the government branch that they vowed to stay secret to. And that's a big commitment in itself and could come with a lot of consequences. I'm gonna help fund some of the whistleblowers' legal fees and stuff, but it's a fund, so like anyone can contribute if they want to.
I'll contribute.
I think you should, bro. Like this is the future. Like imagine if these things like know how the pyramids were built. Imagine if they were around. Imagine if they helped build the pyramids.
They probably did.
I don't know. It's that's the hocus pocus shit, but it's just fascinating. And dude, I got a UFO video myself, and so like. I've been invested. I went on a little UFO expedition, and I'm wondering, like, do I release it? Do I not? And I ultimately haven't because It's compelling, not convincing. But the interesting thing about it is, and what I'm noticing, some of these saucers and crafts that they're describing appear more than once. Like, that looks like the same as that, and that looks like the same as that, and there's got to be like a connection. Like, I heard somewhere there's like 5 civilizations of extraterrestrials on the planet, and potentially like warring factions. And
yeah, there's got to be different groups and gangs for sure. They're clicked up like the Bloods and Crips.
Goddamn right.
I can't believe I just made it through that. Congrats to all of you for surviving that clip. Oh, wow, that was a lot of whiskey. So it looks like the UAP Disclosure Fund will be getting the funding of 2 of the richest influencers out there today. Interesting. Do you guys know what the UAP Disclosure Fund is? I'm going to share this a little bit with you guys. Is that showing up? Okay. So the UAP Disclosure Fund is committed to uncovering the truth about UAP through transparency, declassification, and political advocacy. Let's take a look at who's involved with this. And I'm not like disparaging the UAP Disclosure Fund. I'm disparaging the Paul brothers for the many bad things they've done in the past. But let's take a look at the team of the UAP Disclosure Fund. Looks pretty familiar, right? There you go. You've got Lou Elizondo as the board of directors, Gary Nolan, board of director, Carl Enel, board of director, Christopher Mellon, advisory board. I mean, you got some heavy hitters right there. That's for sure. Ooh, that's cool. They turn to color when you click on them. Wow. Like a 10-year-old. Kirk McConnell, advisory board. Wan Feng. Wan Feng. I'm so sorry. Political strategist and creative director. Matthew Ford, director of strategy. Lester Nair, director of operations. Jordan Flowers, chief financial officer. And Leslie Duckworth, treasurer and secretary. Duckworth. That is the perfect name for a treasury person, in my opinion. Reminds me of Scrooge McDuck diving into a pool of gold coins, which would hurt so bad. I don't recommend that. Don't jump into a pool full of gold coins. So there's the Disclosure Fund, guys. And it looks like they're getting some large people, not physically. Well, the Paul brothers are pretty large. They are wrestlers and boxers, but pretty influential, wealthy people to help fund their stuff. So, I mean, all the power to them. Get that coin. Dig up them alien bodies and those craft. All right. Let's move to our next story. And this brings us to Sarah Gam. Now, I'm not too familiar with Sarah's work, but she sort of came on the scene not too long ago to claim that she worked with the UAP task force, that she was a member. And she talked about this Jellyfish UFO video that had been making the rounds. And I guess there's some controversy with her involvement and that she actually did not work for the UAP task force, even though she said she did. Bunch of other shows covered this. I won't go too in depth about it, but she made some claims on different podcasts that the Jellyfish UFO had been explained, and there were people who begged to differ. And that actually included the head of the UAP task force, Jay Stratton, and UAP task force member Travis Taylor as well. And I guess recently, several people, including people who've been on this show approached Jay Stratton and asked, "Do you know who Sarah Gam is?" And he had absolutely no idea who this person was. So it doesn't look good. That doesn't look good, unfortunately, for Sarah Gam. It sounds like she may have maybe exaggerated her involvement with the UAP task force. Several shows did say that she literally worked in the office at the UAP task force. So yeah, not good in so many words. But I'm going to go ahead and play this video. This came from Vetted. So a shout out to Patrick over at Vetted. If you guys aren't subscribed to that channel, highly suggest that as well. He did a good in-depth sort of breakdown of the whole Sarah Gam controversy. I don't know if it's so much a controversy. We'll talk about that a little bit on the other side. But let's give this a watch. And first, this video is going to show the Jellyfish UFO video in question. And then it's going to go right into, I believe, an interview that George Knapp did with Andy McGrillen over at That UFO Podcast about this controversy and her involvement with the UAP task force. And I don't exactly remember what the last clip is in this, but give this a watch and we'll talk about it on the other side. So there you see, that is the Jellyfish video. Pretty freaky.
So did you see the Jellyfish video that Jeremy Corbell released during your time at the task force?
Our good buddy Vinny and Adams right there.
That video, because I'm going to clarify now. So that one was the one that had like the little thingies that looked like it was like moving. So yes, I have seen that. It is not what I was talking about in Matt Ford's interview. I appreciate people asking still, and they picked up that I was not on the same page. I did see it. I cannot provide what I know the analysis to be, but this is also giving me a good moment to state something that is very important to me. So first off, that video is not a UAP. I can't provide what it is because the analysis to that is classified, and I'm not risking that. But I'm going to say, it's so frustrating for people. I did not do the analysis on that video. So the people that did, you end up getting somebody that does unauthorized disclosure, which in the intelligence community is leaking information. So like Snowden. Snowden went in, leaked information, unauthorized disclosure. That's illegal. And when these people leak stuff like this, you leak 5% of what it is. They don't provide what the analysis actually was. So it's really frustrating from a person on my end that some of the data that was leaked from when I was on the task force, we would spend very good effort on. And somebody would leak a still photo or a screenshot or whatever, and only provide that screenshot. And that's not the story.
I had Sarah Gam on the podcast, UAP task force analyst. I don't know if you heard some comments she made, either with Ross Coulter or Matt Ford, I can't remember, around the Jellyfish video that yourself and Jeremy brought forward. And just to again paraphrase, when I spoke to her, she seemed to be under the impression she knew exactly what it was, that it wasn't something anomalous or ET, shall we say. And she was quite frustrated at who leaked it and why it was leaked. And when I spoke to her, do you want to speak on that as much as you can?
Sure. Yeah. You know, the first time I heard her name, she was described as the manager of the UAP task force, which was ridiculous. The second time I heard her name, they said she was a member of the UAP task force. So I went to the UAP task force. The people that we know ran it, Jay Stratton, Travis Taylor. I asked, do you know this lady? They'd never met her. They'd never heard of her. Jay Stratton said she could be one of the hundreds of intelligence folks in the government who at one point had touched some of these videos, had seen some of the images and done some analysis. But to say that she worked with or for the UAP task force is a little bit of a stretch. It's like me saying, I subscribe to the MUFON journal, therefore I'm the head of MUFON. It's ridiculous. As for the jellyfish video, I can tell you when that video was shown to the UAP task force, and it was after the UAP task force had ceased to exist. Jeremy and I presented it to the two names I just mentioned in a hotel room after the UAP task force was done. They had never seen it before. So either Sarah saw this and didn't pass it along, or she's not exactly being truthful. She may have seen a video that looked like it. I don't know why she's saying it. As for the people who leaked it, if she knows who they are, she should probably tell somebody, because this was a classified operation, a classified base. It was put on a classified server. If they know who leaked it, you would think there would be an investigation. That has not happened. It has not happened. The first time that the UAP task force personnel saw that video was after the UAP task force had ceased to exist. And that is a fact.
Okay. Well, we definitely have some discrepancies. That's for sure. This could be due to a lot of things. It sounds like maybe there was some misunderstanding early on when Sarah started doing interviews, that she literally worked for the UAP task force, although she did say that in one of the videos, where that was not true. That simply was not true. She was not employed by the UAP task force. She did not work for the UAP task force. From what I understand, she was one of, like George said, countless analysts who were shown certain videos and photos to try to get their opinions and analysis on these things. However, this jellyfish video was classified, so she should not have seen that if this were the case. Or was it a different video altogether? This whole timeline is confusing. It's convoluted. I don't get it at the end of the day, but I think we can put to rest that Sarah Gam did not directly work for the UAP task force. That's one thing that we can say. But that does not take away from the other things she's done, the credentials that she does have. But it does put into question her thoughts and theories on UAP analysis, to be honest. So again, make of it what you will. Everybody wants their 15 minutes of fame, Duncan says. I just don't think there's a there. You son of a... Drink to that. Stratton could also be lying, Michael Huntington says. That's true. Not saying that. I am not saying that. But who knows? Who knows with any of this stuff, guys? Who knows? Jellyfish videos. Man, that thing is freaky. You guys seen like those? I think they're like AI generated images. They weren't real, but they kind of showed like the like beings attached to the bottom of that thing. Oh, that was freaky. No, thank you. I want nothing to do with that. Neither does Suzanne. So let's move on from the drama in the UFO field. Why would I say that? Let's move on from the drama of the UFO field. That's all this freaking field is. Give me a break, Ryan. Let's move to some more drama. Why don't we? Speaking of Jay Stratton, guy just got an award, right? Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force is hereby awarded the National Intelligence Meritorious Unit Citation. Meritorious, excuse me. Me no words. Me no words good. Former head of the Pentagon UAP Task Force wins a National Intelligence Award. So, Jay Stratton, former head of the UAP Task Force, along with the entire task force, were recently awarded the National Intelligence Meritorious Unit Citation from the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines. This award recognizes single acts of meritorious service performed by an intelligence community team or organizational unit. The UAPTF was specifically cited for its team building, removal of stigma associated with UAP, and their application of the highest levels of analytic rigor to a problem of longstanding national significance. The citation mentions how the UAPTF transformed the perception of UAP within the intelligence community, the United States government, and the American public. This is interesting. So a task force, which is no longer functioning, was given this award by Avril Haines. And kind of the reason we found out about this was from Tim Gallaudet, the former Navy Rear Admiral that testified at the UFO hearing. So he spoke at some sort of conference recently, and I got a video I'm going to play for you guys where we learned that Jay Stratton in the UAP task force was given an award. And this kind of ties in to the now famous email that was deleted or erased that Tim Gallaudet testified under oath at this UFO hearing about a UFO video that he had seen. So give this a watch, and we'll talk a little bit more about it on the other side.
This is not our tech. I knew it wasn't China or Russia tech because I'd been reading all the threats. I had secret access program access, and I knew, okay, this is something different. But I couldn't say much about it, and I'll talk about that later because I stayed in government. But ultimately, I found out later, I know what happened. That email was wiped from my computer the next day, and my boss and the operations officer never talked about it in different meetings. How did that happen? Because this gentleman in charge of the UAP task force at the time directed that the email be taken off because that he wasn't sure if that was U.S. tech or not, as Leslie mentioned. Jay Stratton, he led that task force, and he actually that little symbol in the middle, he just got an award this year for leading his effort to investigate UFOs by the current director of national intelligence, which is quite astonishing. It kind of reveals this sort of fractured nature of our UAP policy right now, that he gets an award, but we don't talk about it. I don't know what. So that's a whole other thing. But that email was wiped from my computer because Jay directed it so, and they were trying to investigate. Is that U.S. tech, adversary tech, or something different? And ultimately, I've communicated with Jay, and we realize now it was not U.S. tech, and it was not adversary tech. It's something different, and we don't know what it is.
Oof, interesting. So the head of the UAP task force was given an award, and in turn, Tim is saying that Jay Stratton was the very person who had the email erased from his computer. You cannot make this shit up, guys. You can't. Now, in retrospect, Jay would tell Tim, yeah, like that, it turned out to not be American tech. We don't believe it's foreign tech. It is something else. So there is that. But this is crazy. This is just crazy. There was something I wanted to read out here. Oh, thank you, James Craig, for the $20 super chat for the AARO lapel pin fund. I want one of those. I want one of those for sure. Then I'll be fairly deemed a shill. Grant LeVoc, welcome, buddy. I hope you enjoyed. We played your fun Susan Goff video at the top here, Grant. So thank you for giving us all a laugh right at the beginning of the show. He says, I'd be interested to learn when Tim Gallaudet learned that information about. Was it after his appearance at the hearing or before? If before, why did he not disclose it in his testimony? Good question. Yeah, I don't know. I'm guessing that event that he was speaking at, that clip we just saw, Leslie Kean was also there. I think he even mentioned Leslie Kean in the video. And I know she was at the UFO hearing, so I do wonder if it was that same weekend. I don't know. I mean, it could have been any time. I don't know. I'm just trying to put timetables together that I know nothing about. But that would be interesting. Very, very good point. Yeah, so this is interesting. So getting this award, this is not this man's first award. I'm going to go through this ridiculous list of awards that Jay Stratton has been given in his career. Listen to this. His personal military decorations include the Meritorious Service Medal, the Joint Commendation Medal, the Air Force Commendation Medal, and the Air Force Achievement Medal. He has been awarded numerous Joint and Service Unit commendations, both combat and garrison. He has several expeditionary and campaign medals from his deployments. He was also awarded the DIA Director's Award and campaign medals from his deployments. He was then also awarded the DIA. Oh, nope, I just read that. He was also given the Navy Meritorious Civilian Service Award, Central Intelligence Agency Meritorious Unit Commendation, and the ODNI Meritorious Unit Commendation. Holy hell. I was a bowler, guys. I've league bowled my whole life. Not my whole life. I'd say I stopped probably when I was like 17, 18. But I had hundreds of bowling trophies. My father was almost a professional bowler. Dude's got like 300 rings. He's thrown 300 perfect games of bowling. Bowled up until the last like few years. And we have so many bowling awards, but my God, this man's awards put those to shame. I'm just going to say it. I can't believe I compared bowling trophies to what Jay Stratton has done, but that's where we're at right now, guys. But this is just to show what a ridiculous week it has been in ufology overall. But yeah, what do you guys think? I want to know what you think about Jay Stratton getting an award from Avril Haines for his work and the work of all of the UAP task force that apparently Sarah Gam was not a member of. Guys, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back and talk all about the symposium that took place this weekend, the SOL Foundation Symposium that happened in San Francisco, California. And we are going to get the on-site inside scoop from the one and only Suzanne Landers, our incredible moderator, as she was there for all of it. We're going to run through all of the speakers, her personal experiences at the event, and what she took away from it, and so much more. So check out this commercial, and we will be back on the other side to talk all about the SOL Foundation Symposium. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Greetings, everyone. Ryan Sprague here, host of Somewhere in the Skies. For over 7 years and more than 400 episodes, the Somewhere in the Skies podcast has always been free to listen to, but it's not free to create. So we offer several ways to help support our efforts and get rewards in return. If you listen to the podcast on Apple, you can click the subscribe button at the top of your Somewhere in the Skies feed to become a premium Apple subscriber. Or you can join our Patreon campaign with several tiers available. Both of these options give you the same benefits and rewards: ad-free episodes, early access to the main show, and bonus episodes and content. Help keep the lights on at the Somewhere in the Skies HQ, and help us continue to grow by becoming a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/somewhereskies, or by clicking the subscribe button at the top of your Apple feed. Thank you for your continued support, and keep looking up. And keep looking up. I don't know what I was doing in that commercial, guys. I don't know what happens when I push record. Like, I'm normal right now, but when I get into performance mode, that is an entirely different musical theater drama nerd Ryan coming out for you. So apologies. But that being said, if you would like to join our Patreon campaign or become an Apple Premium subscriber, those options are available to you to help support everything we do. Robert Chafee, I think he got what is similar to a participation award. Ouch. Oh, everyone should get a participation award. You guys deserve a participation award for tonight. Again, I want to give a special thank you to Suzanne Of course, to Spooky Boo, to Good Morning UFO Amy, and to James Craig for your incredible support, guys, and to all of you for being here tonight. We did a poll over on YouTube. I want to get to that before we bring Suzanne in here. And our poll was, this comes off the back of our last story that we talked about. Does Jay Stratton and the UAPTF deserve an award? So, out of, let me refresh just in case. Okay, I'm glad I did that. So, out of 77 votes, 27% of you said yes, Jay Stratton and the UAPTF deserve an award. 21% of you said no. 21% of you said I don't care. And 31% of you said we all deserve an award. So you guys win. You all get the participation trophy for tonight. So good job. Good job, everybody. We did it. Mission accomplished. Civilian UFO research for the win. Donnie, Suzanne, one step closer to sainthood. Michael says, what symposium papers were presented? Let's find out if there were any papers presented. Ryan always turns on the sultriness when recording ads. I know. Got to get that coin somehow, buddy. I lure you in with those Susan Goff eyes. All right. Oh, I love this, Jay Rosenberg. We get Jay Rosenberg's trophy. All right, guys. So, what are we going to be talking about now? That is the SOL Foundation Symposium that took place in San Francisco this weekend. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend, but we had our incredible moderator, Suzanne, who was there the entire time. Chrissy Newton was there as well. A few other of our friends and colleagues were there too. So I want to give a special shout out to Bryce Zabel, to Ryan Graves, to Chrissy Newton, and to everyone who, James Fox as well, who showed his new documentary in advanced screening of the program. So we'll hear a little bit about that as well from Suzanne too. So I want to give them all a very special shout out and hello. I hope they had a good time. But what is the SOL Foundation and the symposium? I'm going to give a little paragraph here, and then we will finally bring in the mother of all saints, and that is Suzanne. Led by some of the most prominent and thoughtful voices on UAP from government, academia, and technology, SOL's meeting this year reinvigorates the UAP conversation by showcasing new scientific discoveries, proposals for government reform, ideas for social action, and visions of technological innovation. So, did they live up to that mission? Let's find out. Let's bring her in. The one and only Suzanne Landers. Welcome back. You're on mute. Oh, you're so kind and polite.
I exhaust myself. I am exhausting.
Why are you exhausting?
Well, I'm exhausted and exhausting. I'm both.
You must be so tired. You have been nonstop for the past 48 hours or so. So yes. God bless you for even being here with us tonight. You must be. I know how these things go. There's never a moment to breathe, never a moment to rest. You're in another city. You want to go explore. You also want to be present for all of this, learn everything you can. So let's start at the very beginning. What meal did you get on your flight to San Francisco? No, I'm just kidding. This is your first UFO conference, right?
It was.
Okay.
And it was an experience.
Yeah.
I am half brain dead. I'll just tell you, from sitting in a chair for 16 or 17 hours, listening and taking ridiculous notes like this. They're like 25 pages of these notes. And I'm not saying this is really related, but I had to send Ryan like a photo of a portion of some notes on a particular topic. And then he took to his bed sick. So
I did.
I'm thinking it might be related, but I don't know for sure. But anyway,
no.
25 pages of this mess over here.
Okay. No, my sickness had to do with a seafood medley that I dumb Ryan decided to have at like midnight before he went to sleep. So that was my problem. But while I was sick, Suzanne, you were living it up in San Francisco, meeting Christy Newton, meeting James Fox, meeting Ryan Graves, just having, I would assume, the time of your life. But tell us a little bit more about when you first got there, and walk us through your initial, I guess, attendance at the SOL Symposium.
I'll tell you, and I'll just confess right now, Ryan knows this about me. I am a terrible introvert. I know it's hard to imagine while I'm on this camera with you guys, but I am the world's worst introvert. And so being out there, Ryan's messaging like, oh, go talk to James Fox, go find Bryce Zabel and have him do a clip. It took all of my inner strength to go do these things. And so, Ryan Sprague, you're going to be here next year and you're going to be the front man and I'm going to run along behind and be the detail.
Gladly. I would be happy to. I
did it, but boy, it is outside of my comfort zone. It's, my husband just like, I cannot with you. I cannot.
So, well, first of all, a huge thank you to your husband as well for accompanying you to your UFO conference. My partner knows that feeling.
Yeah.
She definitely knows that feeling. Yeah. She's been to quite a few with me at this point. She's basically my handler when I go to these.
I'll be the handler next year. You be the front man.
So, who was the first person you ran into or introduced herself to at this thing?
Yeah.
I gotta know.
Yeah, the first person was Christy Newton.
Really?
And she is so nice and so kind and very gracious. And so all I need for my introvertedness is that initial step in. And as long as it's kind and whatnot, calm, then I immediately calm down. And she did all that for me. And so once I talked to Christy and I got us a little clip for you to use whenever you're ready, then I did kind of calm down. And so Bryce was next, Bryce Zabel. Very nice. And he can talk to anyone.
Oh, yeah.
And I think maybe the audience might be interested in knowing it is not easy to talk to these people. They are like rock stars. And you have to wait in line and you kind of have to wedge. And, I'm that person on the sidewalk. I will not step in front of another person. I will not push ahead.
The same way.
It's just, it makes me so uncomfortable, but I held my space and got to talk with Bryce, who's very, very kind too. I also got to talk very briefly with Whitley Strieber. I'm not sure.
Oh, interesting. How was that?
I appreciated that opportunity. He's a little bashful. He's very soft-spoken. And so here we're two introverts kind of looking at each other going, I don't know what we do here.
Two wallflowers
around each other. But I wanted to thank him because, Ryan, I don't know if you remember this, but my UFO experience was as a very young child.
Yes.
And I spent, 40 or 50 years first on microfiche and, looking at old newspaper reports, thinking it was a plane crash and whatnot. And I really didn't have a solid answer because of the volume of noise that was involved in my incident while everybody else was reporting silence, until I picked up Whitley Strieber's new book when I was in Scotland a couple of years ago, whenever that was. And the first two stories in his book were exactly like my experience. And so it felt like an answer. I mean, I know it's not an answer, but I could stop the search, I guess, is really what it was.
Vindication. Right?
Yes.
Almost.
Yes. And it wasn't just me, and it wasn't that I was just a child and didn't understand. Anyway, so I waited to get to talk to Mr. Strieber. And I did have to interrupt a little bit, which I was very proud of myself for doing that, just to tell him thank you and what it meant to me. And he was very kind in response, very kind. I also had the feeling I'm one of hundreds who wanted to take a chance to tell him thank you.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, he must get it all the time. I mean, he's one of the most famous abductees ever. Yeah. I had the immense pleasure of having him on the show, and can that guy wax philosophy?
Yes.
My God.
Yes, it's just quietly, but yes.
Yeah, it was such a rewarding interview. Like, I know a lot of people maybe don't believe him and his story, or they think like, yeah, he may have had an initial experience and then kind of like went off the rails after that. But I firmly think Whitley Strieber believes what has happened to him.
Yeah.
And he takes it to heart, and he takes it very personally and very seriously. So again, like skeptics will skeptic, believers will believer.
Right.
But I've always found Whitley somewhere right in the middle. My personal stance on everything that's happened to him. But my God, I mean, his book is right here on my shelf. It's in every ufologist's collection. So
sure it is.
And that was pretty interesting to finally meet one of these like preeminent experiencers.
Yes, exactly. And he is very kind and very soft-spoken. I enjoyed talking with him. But let me tell you who my favorite discussion was with, and that was with Ryan Graves. He and I just sort of bumped into each other in the lunch line. We were, going through getting sandwiches, and I was just trying to get out of the way of the commotion with my sandwich in hand. And he and I found ourselves sort of looking at each other, and I said something like, "Oh, Mr. Graves, tremendous respect and appreciate what you've done. And I know it couldn't have been easy," or something like that. And he was very humble. He said, basically, it was just, it's what anyone would do. And I stopped him and I said, "No, it's not." I said, there are times in history when a particular human steps up and does a particularly important thing, and you did that. And there are those of us out here who appreciate and know what that must have been like to come forward. And oh my gosh, you guys, he teared up. I thought, oh gosh, I'm going to have to tell my Ryan that I've made Ryan Graves cry. Like, oh my goodness. I mean, he wasn't actually crying, but it was just that moment where I thought, oh gosh, okay, well, anyway.
Wow. Oh, that's so sweet.
He was very sweet. He was very kind. I was hoping to get another chance to talk a little more, because within the crowd kind of parted us, and we said goodbye, and a television crew with cameras dragged him off. He said, "I'm so sorry to go.
Of course.
I've got to go with them." And I felt like he really meant it. He might have stood there to talk a minute more, but he had to go do what he had to go do.
I love when people are willing to take the time to just listen. And that's what I do at these events. Like, that's what I'm there for. Like, I am the witness guy. We're up to 33 volumes of witness accounts that's somewhere in the skies. Like, that's just my thing. So after every talk I give, I say, like, come find me and tell me your story. Like, that's what I'm all about. I'm not about nuts and bolts ufology and the data and the evidence. Like, that's never been my thing. And I get a lot of, flack for that. Sure. That I'm a testimony guy. I'm a story guy, but that's my ufology. It always has been. I've never been like in the closet about that. Like,
I suspect that's why you have the following. You have those stories resonate with others. That's how I made my way to the podcast, was listening to the witness accounts.
Yeah.
So I think it does matter.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sticking with me. I truly appreciate that. And it is good to hear from witnesses and experiencers.
It is, isn't it?
Well, let's talk a little bit, I guess, about, let's see. I have your amazing, not your 40-page notes, but you sent me a 10-page outline. So I want to go through this with you, because a lot of people are dying to know, like, what was presented there, what was said. I have a pretty dramatic quote from Dr. Eric Davis, which we'll get to a little bit later, that's been making the rounds. But let's start with, we have here Leslie Kean and Ryan Graves. So did they talk together, or what was the deal with this?
They did, and many of these sessions had multiple either speakers or someone in play, like Gary Nolan, who was asking a question and the other guest was answering.
Oh, cool.
And that was the situation here with Leslie Kean and Ryan Graves. Leslie was sort of prompting the questions and Ryan was answering.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So what was it that they sort of talked about?
Well, Ryan started going through the history of the trouble that pilots were having with UAP, from a position almost of fear and safety based. and they weren't allowed to talk about it, that it wasn't being investigated. And those reasons, safety and security, along with how the government was basically, putting the stop sign up, were why he decided to go to the New York Times. And he was shocked, he said, that he did not have repercussions from the government or co-workers. He sounded really surprised to me. I think he was braced for that to be the case. But after having talked with him directly in this one little private brief moment, I had a feeling maybe his softer personality made it hard for others to be mean, to be ugly to him. But importantly, he said safety continues to be a real issue, that the orbs are still seen constantly. He really wants that UAP Act to pass for pilot safety and for reporting stigma that others are experiencing. One of the groups he's working with is the White House Space Economy and Lower Orbit Group. And then Leslie chimed in, and she told about the first incident that she had heard about, which was in 1981, and it was terrifying. She described that the pilots flying along, an orb dropped straight down from the upper atmosphere and straight in front of the pilot's front window. Ooh. The pilot thought it was going to crash into them. And pilot later described that this object was at a distance the size of a grapefruit. So if you hold your arm out and you're holding a grapefruit, that's the size, which to him meant, to Ryan Graves meant, this was a really big object.
Yeah.
When it was first seen. And then here, this is crazy. There was a bending of the atmosphere, Leslie Kean said. And someone said, what do you mean, a bending of the atmosphere? And she said that the pilot could see that the place where the object had come from was much darker than the space around it, and that something had happened. It was just clear that something had happened in the atmosphere.
Around.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And
interesting.
It was round. It had windows evenly spaced around its circular shape. And it really made an impact on her. And I think that's what got her attention to start talking privately to pilots and whatnot about it.
Okay. Which, was culminated, I would assume, into her famous book, UFOs, Government Officials, Pilots Go on the Record. Love that book. That's one of my favorite UFO books. It got me interested in the Tehran UFO incident, and that quickly became my favorite UFO case of all time. It was the first FOIA request that I made through the guidance of the one and only John Greenwald.
Yeah.
And the stuff I got back on that event read like a sci-fi novel. It was
really
crazy. I'll have to post the documents that I think it was the Department of Intelligence. Yeah, the DIA gave to me.
Yeah.
Really interesting. Anyways, I'm on a diatribe. So
well,
Ryan
I'm going to add this too, because the other thing there were two things that I thought everybody would like to know. One is that from the 80s, the early 80s, until today, the FAA is still recommending that pilots report UAP to MUFON or local law enforcement.
What?
I know. And Ryan Graves was just shaking his head. It's like that piece of the puzzle is so out of place.
Yeah.
And I just can't imagine the government saying, yeah, you nearly died up there from an object about to hit you that we don't know what that is, but go tell MUFON. What?
Nothing against MUFON, but when we're dealing with near misses of commercial flights, military flights, there has to be a protocol set into place for a more official investigation than a civilian-run UFO group.
Exactly. It cannot operate like this. It cannot. The other thing I thought everyone might like to know is that she's currently working on her second season of the Nat Geo show. And this is going to focus on the commercial pilot's perspective. And she said, sort of as a teaser, there's one wild video of an object that everyone's going to want to see, but she couldn't estimate when it'll be ready and out. So I think they must be in early stages.
Stay tuned. buckle up, weaponize your curious. I'm sorry, I had to.
Exactly.
Oh, that's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Look forward to.
Anything else from them, or should we move to?
I think move on. Yeah,
Let's
on. Maybe
move on
Tim
to
Galladay.
Tim Galladay. I kept saying
Or
Galladay.
Galladay. You hear it both ways.
Yeah.
I know.
Cool. So what did he have to say? Anything
Well,
new?
just to remind everybody, he's the retired Navy Rear Admiral, and he was formerly the NOAA oceanographer. He's on the advisory board of the Galileo Project and the SOL Foundation. He's currently advocating huge research focused on undersea and transmedium UAP. And he's got a group he is already working on, and he promised that video is coming soon. I can't wait. So now I got to go adjust my Google notices to put him in video so that we won't miss that the instant it comes out. He said these incursions are happening so often that sailors are absolutely blasé about it. And I thought, that's not okay either.
That's not good.
That's not good. That's not good. He really wants that UAP policy in place. He calls the way, I thought this was funny. And he's a funny guy. He's sort of a real straight-laced guy, as you can tell from listening to him, but he's also got a good sense of humor. He said the current handling of the UAP problem is a dog's breakfast. And someone said, what? And very unorganized. It is this today, it's that tomorrow. It's dog's breakfast. So I thought that was a pretty good descriptor of what's going on, especially if pilots are going to call MUFON.
Right. Are we getting kibbles and bits?
Yeah,
or are we getting chow or whatever it's called?
On a much more serious note, I thought this was an interesting observation. He sees the current situation with regard to UAP reporting and all the different agencies that are involved one way or another as being very much like America pre 9/11, where police, FBI, Secret Service, all the departments were not communicating. And that until that communication can be tied together, we're going to continue to have a dog's breakfast.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also learned a whole lot about submarines and how they detect submarines. I didn't know that. I knew they can detect them. They know where they are. But I didn't know that using a particular sound system or sound sensor, I guess is a better way to do it, they can tell exactly what it is, exactly what kind of ship it is. And from that, they're going to know whose it is. And he talked a lot about sensors hitting off Japan's coast that they thought were a sub. But when they used this sort of double checking sensor to find out what kind of sub, there was no return. And he said a submarine with no sound is not humanly possible. So it's something. They don't know what it is because then they couldn't find anything else. But I think we're going to hear a lot of that sort of thing. We can sort of prepare our brains around this whole new world because, we don't hear a whole lot about underwater things. So
not yet. Yeah, not yet. I did recently reach out to my contact who worked on the NASA UAP study. She's an oceanographer, Dr. Paula Bontempi. She's been on the show in the past, and she's going to come back on.
Oh, good.
Actually, to kind of talk about everything that's been going on. She worked with Mike Gold on the UAP study team for NASA. So I want to kind of get her thoughts on where everything is today, because I talked to her like right when the UAP study group had just did their like press conference, but a lot has happened since then. So I really hope that we are moving further into our oceans when it comes to USOs rather than just UFOs myself. So,
well, speaking of our oceans, I thought this was interesting. Somebody asked him about Danny Sheehan's comments about knowing where 2 alien bases were in the water.
Yeah.
And he said he wanted to see their research and he would not confirm or deny. So what I didn't hear was, well, that's ridiculous. The way it came out, it was like, this is serious business that needs to be looked at.
Interesting.
He also gave us a little moment of drama. He called Sean Kirkpatrick down on the rug. I mean, just did it about that tweet that Kirkpatrick put out about not having hired Gallaudet.
Oh, right.
Yeah. He said, it is all false. He said that he has only interacted with Kirkpatrick as a citizen, that his job at the time was categorized as an undersecretary, which was a much better rank than any job that Kirkpatrick could ever have offered him, and that they asked him to apply for that job that Kirkpatrick was talking about, and he declined. He never even put an application in. So he said he wasn't sure why Kirkpatrick had lied so patently.
Okay. Yeah. So we've got Gallaudet versus Kirkpatrick, sponsored by the Logan Paul and Jake Paul brothers, coming to your screens on Netflix.
That's right.
I love it.
That's right. Yeah.
I love it. Wow.
He was really disappointed.
Called him a liar.
Yeah. He was really disappointed in Kozlowski saying that AARO position that there was no confirmation of NHI or materials or reverse engineering. And that was, he used the word disappointing. He was disappointed to hear that.
I get that. Did he talk at all about like how he thought the UFO hearing went at all?
He didn't.
No?
He didn't. And no one asked him anything about it.
Huh. That's weird. It's like it never happened.
It's like it didn't happen. Right.
Right. Interesting. I do want to say, I just want to give a shout out. We got another super chat here, Suzanne, from the good old biologist. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much. So kind. We're getting close on this new microphone.
We're getting close to the new microphone, guys. So thank you. Thank you to everyone.
And the lapel pin.
Yes, and that AARO lapel pin. Help us get to our goal, guys. And we'll see what happens. Okay, so Tim Gallaudet, let's move to kind of the man of the hour, who's making some waves as he usually does with the sensational things he says, and that is Dr. Eric Davis. I'm going to bring up the quote that everyone's quoting. Pretty long. I'm not going to read it. You guys can read it as we talk about it. But what did you think of seeing Eric Davis? This man does not give talks often.
He was great. Really? He was fascinating. And just so that our viewers know, he's a physicist by training, and he says he's worked on UAP for years, which is another observation. These discussions about, yes, we worked on reverse engineering, and we worked on blah, blah around UAP, biologicals, whatever. It was being talked about as a given. There was none of this, hemming and hawing around a bush. It was, this is what's happening. I've worked on UAP for years. He worked first as a fighter wing in South Korea, then got a job as a physicist at NIDS. And then he became the director of aerospace. He did physics work, this is fascinating, on anomalies like Skinwalker Ranch and other similar places. And we didn't tell us what these other similar places were. But basically, Hal Puthoff then hired him at Bigelow. And he was at Bigelow for 15 years and then went back to Aerospace Corp for 15 until last spring, went into rocket development. And then he also does some support work, or did, for DOD's nuclear fission work for weapons. And he's a part-time consultant. So that's sort of his background.
All right.
I know.
So what did he talk about?
Wow. Oh my gosh. So he's done a lot of briefings, he said, to the Senate on UAP. He says Jay Stratton then later did a European UAP task force.
What?
I know. That's why that came into you in red, right?
What?
No one ever
That's
talks
crazy.
about it.
A European UAP task force. Was this
European UAP task force? Right.
When was this? Did he say when it was?
He didn't say. Nobody asked him a question about it.
Oh, come on, guys.
I know. Yeah. And then he said he discovered legacy recovered UAP craft. He did formal briefings about this, and he called Chris Mellon after the briefings, which were in a skiff. And the topic of the briefings was craft recovered from unknown origins.
All right.
Yep, there you go.
So this kind of ties into everything we've been hearing lately. Okay.
Involved talking to numerous whistleblowers, with the implication being those whistleblowers are still out there. We don't know who they are yet. He has spoken to the White House, to CEOs, to people just in SCIFs, to security, military, to classified and unclassified people, and to people who actually worked on crash retrievals.
Wow.
I know.
Now, was he the one who recently said that he knows for a fact that Jay Stratton briefed Trump when Trump was president on the UAP topic? Is that true?
I think that was him. And the other thing that he said was that Lakatsky, he worked directly with Lakatsky, and he had a letter from Lakatsky that totally green lighted him to be able to go into any facility through any documents, regardless of classification. So if you put all those pieces together, this is the right kind of guy, I think, who could do exactly what you were just asking about.
All right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Now, Kurt McConnell and he were on the stage together, and this was fascinating to me. They brought up the subject of presidential read-ins, and this is basically Kurt McConnell telling the following.
Okay.
Not all presidents were read in because some were not trusted. And I thought that was fascinating with no elaboration. And they only happened, these read-ins, when a president had a need to know. Those he could confirm were read in were Truman, Eisenhower, Carter, Bush II, Trump per Stratton, and on the topic of crash retrieval, Reagan and Nixon. And the one he would confirm who was not read in was Bill Clinton, who apparently got ticked off and accused his staff of lying to him about it.
Okay. This is interesting.
I thought
so. Every president you mentioned has some sort of tie to UFO lore.
That's right.
So for me, is it the chicken or the egg? Like, is Davis and what was the other gentleman's name?
McConnell, Kirk McConnell.
Okay. Like, are they borrowing this from UFO lore and just saying these are the presidents that were read in? Or is it the other way around? And this is true. This is fact that each of these presidents was read into whatever, UAP, UFOs, and alien presence because of their connection to the topic. Oh, man.
I'll tell you, sitting there in the room, it was like from personal knowledge.
Okay.
That's how it hit me. I don't, obviously have any way to know for sure, but they weren't hemming and hawing around, and they weren't saying we read, we heard, or we think. It was, this is what it was. He also said, cool. Kurt McConnell also said that it's pretty clear from reliable sources. So this is what he's saying about this. This is not what he said about the presidents, that these materials are of non-human origin. And you're going to love this, Ryan. There is a there. There are photos, lab results, and reports. And Lakatsky went into a craft and could find no visible means of propulsion or control. And others in positions of power and control saw the same thing. And then he said, it is confirmed that 0 other nations have this type of tech.
So just the U.S. And Lakatsky was physically...
Well, I think he's meaning like reconstructed tech. That what they're looking at, they don't think they've been able to prove to their satisfaction that it doesn't belong to another nation.
Okay. And Lakatsky was inside a craft?
Went into a craft and could see no visible means of propulsion or control, and that others in position of power and control saw the same.
Wow.
I know. No.
Again, I'm going to go back to if true. Wow.
I know.
Our good, sorry, I have to mention, our resident curmudgeon, Michael Huntington, always coming in. Cool story, bro.
Thank you,
We
Michael.
love you, Michael.
He's a discerning listener, too. It's good to get that from Michael.
Cheers to you, buddy. It's always good. We need a voice of skepticism when it comes to all of this, because they are, I mean, Suzanne, I'm listening to everything you're saying, and it's compelling, it's fascinating, but we have only their testimony to rely on. So show us the evidence. That's, but if any of this is true, this could break open everything. This is interesting. Okay.
Right. And then he is highly focused on Eisenhower having enacted the Presidential Emergency Act in the 1950s. He says this is our Stonewall.
Yeah.
That the executive branch argues that this prevents disclosure to Congress and that it's not subject to FOIA, and that jobs are not publicly bid because it would jeopardize security, and that Congress could choose to defund these entities, but they don't know who they are.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Wow.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought was really fascinating, and this was from McConnell, was that he described when he realized after the New York Times article and talking to pilots that this was true. And these are his words. Mm-hmm. It was a holy crap moment when the truth sunk in.
I can imagine.
I know. And he's working behind the scenes. And then he made this comment on AARO, and this was sort of a repeated theme through a few speakers. AARO has not worked out as hoped.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems that the higher ups got their tentacles into it early on, which is unfortunate. But hey, I'm not ready to give up on them just yet. I think for every good thing or bad thing that AARO has claimed to have done, they do some good stuff too. I mean, it is what it is. Look, like we were begging for an official investigation for years, ever since we learned about ATIP. We got it, and nobody's ever happy. And I understand the frustration, the hesitancy, but like, look, guys, like we asked for this.
Right.
Like, there's no telling how it's going to turn out when it actually comes to fruition, but that's where we're at. So,
and I love this quote he gave from Mark Rubio. Either the government is giving clearances, security clearances to crazy people, or the government's not telling the truth.
Oh gosh.
And he concluded that the problem was the latter. The government wasn't telling the truth.
Yeah.
He says it's not believable that the government is ignoring crashed vehicles and research related to reconstruct them. If that were the case, it would be extremely irresponsible and illogical. And the quote was, "You can't be that stupid for that long."
I love that.
Yeah. I was scribbling that down as fast as I
was going to say, that's going to be the quote of the entire event.
Stupid for that long. That's right. But on a more serious note, in a very touching way, he said the light bulb of truth went off for him after watching potential witnesses physically shaking from fear at the prospect of their information coming out. So, yeah.
Who was it? I know Bryce Zabel's talked about this in the past. There was a president who, when he learned the truth, he
it was
visibly shaken.
Yeah, it was indigestible, I think was his quote. I can't remember who that was, but post Eisenhower, but yeah.
Cool. So then next up, we had Leslie Kean asking questions with Peter Scoffish.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy, and he's worthy of some focus by us. And he also is a quiet fellow. He's clearly very thoughtful and very bright, an anthropologist by training. Everybody knows how much I love to hear from an anthropologist because they are taking on human perspectives from different arenas, and that's exactly what he talked about. You can imagine how UAP might affect this crowd, those of us who are reading and watching and studying on this topic and whose hearts and brains are closer to being prepared for big announcements than, say, those who are not, or let's say Amazonian tribes who live in isolation. So he is looking at a very global perspective of how humans are going to react. And we're going to talk about that. And I cannot believe I'm saying this, but I think they may have actually changed my mind on whether catastrophic disclosure is a good thing. I think it might not be. We'll talk about it. But his point was that care has to be taken in a complex way to accommodate the needs of various society. So, and it's a good thing for us to remember, right? Because we are in one place and the rest of the planet is in another.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to keep that in mind. Like, we live, breathe, sleep this stuff.
Right.
And like a lot of us have accepted the presence of a non-human intelligence of some kind out there. But I do understand why it would be such a paradigm shift for those who don't think about this, who would have to wake up the next morning and everything would change. It would for us too, even quote unquote believers. But like, you know, humans are adaptable creatures, but
and
catastrophic.
Despite my own experience, when David Grush at the first hearing said, "We are not alone," I went cold from head to toe.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And that was, again, one of the quotes pulled from the most recent hearing with Elizondo saying, you know, we're not alone in the cosmos. Yeah. I get it. I get it.
I think that Skafish is coming at this from a really healthy human perspective. He said, it is not safe to assume that these things are objects, even though what may be presenting on the front of it, I guess, might be an object. He said, it's really important to consider that this is a self-to-self relationship or a being-to-being relationship. They deliver messages at times, and we've talked about this many times in live streams. Objects don't deliver messages to humans, so to speak, on their own, right?
Yeah.
And they have craft with indicia that suggest that these are beings. They have windows, they have doors, they have those sorts of things that we as humans also have to have. He says their actions indicate intent, such as when they hover over a nuclear site, and what was going on at Langley, and then I guess this weekend, all weekend in the UK over a site.
Yeah, I heard about that. Crazy.
Yeah. Anyway, he says they're patterns, and that makes me think how much these guys know that we don't know. I don't see patterns when I look at all this, except for drones or whatever that is over the nuclear facilities. We see that. I would say that is a pattern. But other than that, the rest of this, I don't see pattern, but they see pattern.
That's interesting.
And then he got a partial standing applause. Half the audience stood up for him when he talked about how to handle experiencers. There was a whole lot of discussion, as there always is, about whether people telling their story is valid testimony, is valid evidence. And I submit it is, whether it's from a legal perspective or from this perspective. But he said, it doesn't matter that some of them strike the believability button with us. It doesn't matter, because what we think we're watching may just exceed our understanding of reality. And it's probably just something we don't understand. So he says, stay very open-minded, take the data, get the data. And I think that's part of what you do when you record the witness accounts with people, is you're just recording the data. And then we may look back in 10 years at that and we may see what they're talking about.
Right. I'd like to think so. I mean, hopefully, like, even if what I do comes last, I'm fine with that.
Right.
I just think that, like, there is no UFO report without a witness. So, like, we have to take that testimony into consideration, especially when you're trying to triangulate hard nuts and bolts data, whether it's radar returns, sensor data, audio, visual, anything. With the testimony of, let's say, a pilot. Like, you had Ryan Graves talking about how, AARO explained the Go Fast video, yet they didn't interview a single pilot of that event, which is crazy. Like, that they didn't take that into consideration at all. I understand, like, I posted a photo of a freaking seagull. Mick West said, that's a seagull.
That's a seagull.
And I accepted it's a seagull, because it literally was, and I was like heartbroken by that.
I know.
But, like, if I hadn't taken the photo, he would not have been able to explain.
That's exactly the point.
I was a part of the
write the story, put it down. And then he said, use, restraint and acceptance, emotional restraint. Don't be judging it. Just listen and think and brace for things to happen in a way. This is the most interesting quote. To find out that things that we thought were false are true, and things that we thought were true are false. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, that is very interesting.
He also talked a little bit about how he thought disclosures should happen. This will feed in when we talk about Dr. Wendt in a minute, which was fascinating discussion on disclosure. He says it takes time to study the facts and the process. Step one is fix the UAP legislation and get it in place. And to keep in mind that the Senate is just now asking questions. This has gone on for 80 years, but now the people who have the authority to do something are just now putting their toe in the water, so to speak. And that somebody's got to take responsibility for releasing disturbing information. I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
That is interesting. I wonder what they mean by disturbing.
I don't know. It made me think of the quote from the president you were talking about a minute ago. So something being indigestible. So yeah. I don't know. He asked somebody in the audience asked him, "Do NHI have control over secrecy?" And he refused to answer. What does that mean? What does that mean?
What does he know about NHI and their control mechanisms?
Clearly something. Mm-hmm.
Well, I've
always say I don't know, right? He didn't say I don't know.
I've always thought or been under the assumption that we are on the timetable of the phenomena of the intelligence or the source behind some of these UAP, and maybe it is a controlled disclosure, but not from anyone on this planet. I don't know.
Well, controlled disclosure is what we're going to talk about next with Dr. Alexander Wendt. He is a fascinating fellow, really calm in demeanor and a little matter of fact, but in a warm way. He works on human security at Ohio State, and I didn't even know what human security was.
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah, well, it's more about how to, this is me, has probably not the technical definition, but how humans react to things and how to keep them safe and how they interact with their governments to be safe and support what's called the social contract. We're going to talk about that. So the government, start with this premise, the government decides what's a threat and what's the solution, right? And but who in government is going to step forward and be responsible for disclosure? Pentagon typically stays silent. He wrote a book called The Last Humans, which I will order, I haven't yet, that theoretically finishes that Pentagon report. And he wanted to talk about whether UAP were national security threats. And he said, we are the threat. They are not the threat. We are the threat.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting. I think that we've talked about this before as well. We are fearful beings and we are reactive beings and we're quick to violence. And
shoot first, right?
Yeah, shoot first, ask later.
Yep.
And I think that's what he was talking about. He did not expand that. So I don't want to put those words in his mouth, but that's how I read it. And he is clearly of the position that catastrophic disclosure would break the bonds of this societal contract. Well, a societal contract is a simple thing, and we all live under it, particularly in a democracy. The government, we agree as the people to follow the rules and laws set by the government. And in exchange for that agreement, the government agrees to protect us, right? And that core agreement is the basis of the entire relationship between a government and its people. When it is a healthy relationship, you have things like pride in your country and a willingness to work together to achieve a goal, going to the moon, those sorts of things. And he said, when it's unhealthy, governments fall. And that if we are not careful and take our time in the disclosure process, governments will fall. And he said, this is why. And this was so thoughtful and interesting. We see ourselves currently as sort of the lone intelligence on the planet, right? It's all about us. We're sovereign. We dominate the planet. What's important on the planet is us. We are the value here. The planet is ours, right? Should the government do a disclosure on UAP and other beings, I guess the existence of NHI, then 50% of us are going to ignore it, and 50% of us are going to experience ontological shock. because it would falsify our worldview. We're not going to be the lone intelligence. The planet might not be ours. We would not be sovereign here on the focus of all value. There would be what he calls a superior other. And that is a huge blow to humanity's self-esteem. Yeah. And what that does is it basically reveals the inferiority and the impotency of the government, right? So that societal contract then
gone,
right?
Sorry.
And
wow.
Right. And when society realizes the government can't uphold its end of the bargain, which is to protect us, we crash. And then what happens is ugly. Some governments might choose to work with other governments, like the Five Eyes do now, to try to get a plan to manage it for their people and the planet. Other more opportunistic countries will go it alone, hoping to get the tech and the dollars and blah, blah. But that as things break down and society breaks down, then humans break down, right? Mm-hmm. We break down because we no longer have a set of rules that we're following. So this is the one time this weekend that I had cold chills run down my spine. And he said, do not assume state survival. Yeah, he said, pay attention, think, plan, study, prepare. And I would add, share this info, get as many of your loved ones and friends around you to start thinking, even if they're scoffing now, put it in their heads because they need to prepare too. I can tell you the giant takeaway from this weekend is it's out there, it's real, get ready for what's coming. So he said, if UAP turn out to be dangerous, drip that news out slowly to allow all the strata of humanity to accommodate it. And that this issue needs to be promptly placed on a world stage.
Right.
And get a healthy framework was how I interpreted what he was saying among the governments who are willing to work together to plan and deal with this. And he also said this whole thing, this was in maybe a 2-minute span. It was something. And he said, think long and hard on the concept that we may be the last humans to live alone on the planet. I know. I got goosebumps now. It was just so powerful.
Well, it's so interesting because you do hear like every generation feels like they're the most important. And I understand that from a human perspective, like the time you're living in is the time you're experiencing, and good things happen, bad things happen, profound things happen, historical moments happen. Again, good or bad. And it would be so fascinating. And I know people say this all the time, to live in the time when we finally know as a planet that we are not alone, and the many implications that would come from that. So that must have been a very powerful talk. Wow. I really would have enjoyed that one.
It was. And he also said it might be better for the government to tell what he calls these noble lies for a period of time if society is not truly ready. And it may, I'm so quick to say, somebody leak that, just somebody get it out there. Yeah. But now I see why not. I understand better now why not. Not that I still don't want the candy, right? You want that. That'd be very emotionally satisfying until it all falls apart, right?
Until it gives you cavities.
Yeah, until it gives you cavities. We've got some big cavities coming, apparently.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, next up we had, I like this guy, Jeffrey Kripal from Rice University. How is that?
He was great. He is so easy to listen to. He chats like he's known you forever at that podium, like he's sitting at your dinner table. I liked him a lot. But basically the point of his talk was to talk about the archives of the impossible, where since the early 2000s, he's been working really hard to collect important documents related to UAP and NHI. He has Jacques Vallée's documents. He has Whitley Strieber's 3,400 letters and 10 archival boxes. He has all the documents from Stuart Alexander, the physical medium.
Yep.
He got the documents of Ed May from his work with Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff, and he got the documents of Brenda Densler that she had given to Anna Pasolka, and many, many more. We could rattle this off forever. But anyway, that is a fascinating archive, and I think could ultimately be really important.
Absolutely. And I know that he will be featured in an upcoming series called Cosmosis.
Really?
From a friend of the show, Kelly Chase over at UFO Rabbit Hole,
Yes.
and J. Christopher King. So shout out to those guys. They have a new series that will be premiering on streaming in the near future. We will have Kelly on to talk all about it. But I know Jeffrey Kripal is featured prominently in that. I had the pleasure of seeing the first episode, and it's really good.
Yeah.
So a big congratulations to them. I can't wait. And yeah, that's cool. I would have loved to have seen Jeffrey talk about that. Cool. Oh, interesting. Karen Austin, aerial school witness. I am not familiar with this person.
I wasn't either, but I liked her a lot. She's very soft-spoken, and I could tell she and I might be kindred spirits. I'm not sure she was really comfortable on that stage. And she of course, was a child at the time of the aerial school incident. Was it in Zimbabwe, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Somewhere on the African continent. And that's one of my favorite incidences because there were so many witnesses. And her description of that was that it's something wonderful and terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she teared up. She had to stop a minute and get her breath about it. And particularly around John Mack's work, because, John Mack went over there and interviewed all of those children and the teachers who did all of that. And she said, it sounded like, these are my words, not hers, that was what let her get through it, was the kindness and the belief that John Mack showed her, his open and honest interaction with her. And it's still a thing of value to her today.
Wow.
And she wanted, her sole message was, what experiencers are telling us must be believed. They're telling the truth, and sort of echoing from before. The speaker before was they're telling their truth. Some things may sound unbelievable and some things may sound believable, but they're telling their truth, and that we need to pay attention to it.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's cool. I always love to hear new witnesses coming forward, especially from these bigger cases. We've had Soma Sadiq on the show in the past, and I feature her prominently in my lectures that I give. She was one of the primary witnesses as well. So always good to hear from new aerial school witnesses. That's awesome.
And Karen Austin also wanted everyone to know that we need to listen to the messages being given to the experiencers about our situation on the planet, its climate, our nuclear weapons. The messages, she says, are clear, concise, and intentional.
And yet we continue to ignore them time and
Ignore
time
them
again.
completely. Yeah.
Let's move to our next person, Mitch Randall. Not familiar with this person.
Yeah, probably not worthy of any time. Interesting, nice guy. He's involved in Operation Skywatch, which measures UAP movements. He's somebody, I think, let's put him on the radar, tag him on, get connected to him if he's out there on social media to read what he puts out there, if anything.
Cool.
But not a lot to share here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm all for anyone who's looking for UAP and try to capture them. So kudos to Mitch Randall.
Yeah.
Matthew Pine and Gary Nolan. Finally, Gary Nolan shows his face.
Oh,
so
gosh.
what's going on with this one?
Well,
I see there's some stuff in red here on my outline. That can't be good.
So those of you who follow Ryan and me on Twitter, you may have noticed that Ryan and I got in a big Twitter fight about 2 weeks ago. I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was shortly after we posted when the Grush trial date was going to be, like June 5 or something.
Yeah.
And Ryan messages late one night, and which means it's really late where he is. And he says, can you please send me that one document that has the Grush trial date that you got from the court? I said, sure, hang on a second. What's happening? He goes, Twitter. Damn Twitter. And sure enough, I thought, well, if Ryan's in a Twitter fight, I'm in a Twitter fight. We're out there swinging. But it was exactly what Gary Nolan was talking here. And it was about dealing with naysayers, and that's my title. That is not his title. But it's what to say to people when there's no evidence. And Nolan's response was exactly what Ryan was saying in the Twitter fight was, which I'll tell you about what that was, but what research have you done for yourself? I'm not your daddy. Do the effing research. Those are quotes. Those are in quotes. Those are not my words. Those are his words. But the thing about the Grush trial date in the Twitter fight was people were so hateful when Ryan posted the trial date. People were like, dude, you don't post that kind of thing without citing your source. Prove it. Blah, blah, blah. On and on and on.
How's the official document from the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office? Does that work for you? Look, I understand. Like, we live in a field of research that demands sources and evidence, and I fully agree with that and understand that.
Yeah.
And all I did was say, this is the date. I will provide the documentation when I get it. And I did. And, I will give some people credit. Like,
we did get some thank yous by the end of the
We got some thank yous. And one of them came from an individual that many in the UFO field consider an enemy and do not trust, and this, that, who argues on Twitter all the time. But he did reach out to me privately and ask for documentation. I sent it, and he said, thank you so much. Really good work on that. And I said, dude, I had nothing to do with it. That was all Suzanne, my moderator. But again, like, it's not even like we were putting the date of a trial. It's not like we were saying, yo, we found where the freaking football-sized football field UFO is that Ross Coulthard was talking about. Here's the location.
And it wasn't okay for you to say, we got the documents from the Loudoun County Circuit Court. That didn't satisfy me either. It's so entitled.
Well, and I also wanted to be really careful because I wasn't sure what could be made public from what you sent me or not. So I wanted to triple check with you and make sure I didn't have to black out anything or this, that. But it was all public. But
it was all public. And guys, it ended with Ryan saying, here's the document that my admin got, and she paid for it, and you need to tell her thank you.
Always look it up.
There were some cheapest little thank you, Suzanne, underneath.
Yeah.
Anyway,
but
Gary Nolan's right there with you, Ryan. I'm
not
your daddy. Do the effing research.
I would pay to hear Gary Nolan say to a crowd, I'm not your daddy.
I'm not your daddy.
So what was this about? Matthew Pine.
On a serious note now, what they were actually talking about, that was sort of a little diatribe that Gary did. But they were asking ethical questions, which of course I find fascinating, and legal question, the intersection of UAP and law and ethics.
Okay.
Yeah. And so starting off with a conversation on substance, focus on data, not on conclusions, like a witness account, right? Like a witness account. Focus on the data. It's not necessarily our job to focus on a conclusion, to give a conclusion. It's a huge pool of knowledge from experiencers. Take the data. And proof doesn't equal a conclusion. He's kind of going through the scientific method of how you get to a scientific conclusion. But then they went sort of into the ethics arena, which is fascinating. Like, can you be criminally charged for killing an alien? Which I have no doubt is something that has come up behind the scenes for them on the shoot downs.
Yeah. Absolutely. There was a case I talked about really early in the podcast days in New Jersey, of all places. There was a not even a shoot down. Like, they were in possession of a quote unquote live being, and they shot it dead because it tried to escape. Again, like, this could be complete bunk,
right?
Yeah, but I mean, UFO shoot downs apparently happen all the time. That's interesting. And could we be criminally charged for killing an alien.
Yeah, so that was one of the things they talked about for a while. Or I liked this one. Can you get a patent, Lockheed Martin, on alien tech that you have reverse engineered? It's been created by another being, not by you. You know?
Oh.
Yeah, think about the layers of this.
Who's going to make the coin off of that one?
Right. And then what are the ethical duties to an NHI? Like, we have ethical duties like Good Samaritans to help another human in need. How do you expand that? What happens to that? And the government needs to codify this stuff. Somebody needs to be thinking on these issues as part of this overall perspective. And I have ordered a book, and I don't remember the name of it right now, Ryan. You might. I think I sent a link to it, on NHI and law. And I'm going to say it's a little dry, but I'm going to force my way through it. If there's anything there, I'll let you know. But
okay,
around these kinds of questions.
So did they flip it and say, like, what about these decades of alien abductions, of them kidnapping humans,
right.
Basically, as Whitley Strieber would say, like, assaulting you or, you know, impregnating people, if any of this stuff is said to be true. Did they talk about that at all? Like, how would we, you know, charge or hold an NHI responsible for the things they've done?
They didn't say a word about any of it from that perspective. So I don't know what they're thinking on that. I can remember reading, is it Eisenhower's granddaughter who swears that her grandfather made a deal with NHI to be able to take a certain percentage of us for testing or whatever?
That is the rumor, that there was a negotiation, like, we will give you, you know, technology and we can end all of your wars and all this in return. Yeah, that's said to be the lore, at least. Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? And I don't give that a whole lot of stock, but you know, the things that what these speakers are telling us is prepare for things that seem false to be true and that are true to be false.
Yeah.
So, there we are.
Cool.
You want to jump to Avi Loeb?
Let's do it. The Galileo Project man himself.
He's the Harvard astrologist, whatever. Astrophysicist.
Could you imagine if Avi Loeb was an astrologist?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys, you're totally in like the third moon right now. You Sagittarius.
Right.
I can see it.
Yeah. He's the head of the Galileo Project, of course. He's on the advisory board of the SOL Foundation, and he is the head of the Pacific Ocean Expedition, which is fascinating.
Yes.
One of his points was that truth comes in 3 stages. And he meant this kind of as a joke, but not really. You know, the joke with the, you know, the edge to it. He said, first comes ridicule, which all the experiencers understand. The second is violent opposition. It might be intellectual opposition, but violent opposition to whatever. Think Galileo, right? Think Galileo when he was trying to explain that we revolved around the sun, not the other way. And then he said, we jumped straight to, well, this is just self-evident. Like nobody worked hard to get there, you know? So he's got a funny personality. I tell that because you get a sense of what his personality is from that. He's a funny little guy. Regarding Galileo Project, he flat out said the government isn't doing their job. Galileo is collecting data on 100,000 objects a month. And they sort this data to look for the outliers. 95% of what they capture, they can explain. So they're only looking for these weird things that are making no sense. And by the end of summer 2025, they're hoping to have captured millions of objects.
Oof.
And they're using something called noise ratio, which I tried to read a little bit about. It is very dense. We're going to need an expert to talk more about it. And he was going so quickly. But basically, they're sorting noise to determine the size of a signal. And the higher this noise ratio is, the more anomalous the object. And that they started with objects that they understood that were moving in straight lines, sort of to get their baseline. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And they're slowly developing their AI to help them work on this. And I thought these were powerful things. He said that we are likely to discover that we're not the intellectual rulers of the cosmos, and that he thinks it's better to find dark communities out there far away from us that are more sophisticated than we are, because it's a better use of our investment dollars. Look at that.
Well, what is a dark community?
A civilization in a galaxy far, far away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I wasn't sure what he meant by
that. They're in the dark, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I thought this was interesting. They're using these giant magnets to bring up those spherules from the bottom of the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
They're going again in the summer of 2025 with bigger magnets to get more pieces, bigger pieces, they hope. He hired a summer intern that he's clearly very proud of. She has found another 850 spherules, and he's expecting big things in 2025.
Wow.
Yeah. And of course, as you would expect, when they analyze these things, they are coming up with crazy numbers that don't exist in those numbers, like percentages of this or that, anywhere else in the universe that we know of. So it's being crafted likely by somebody.
So did he say, are they going back to the same location where they found the other spherules, or will this be a different?
I didn't say that, but I suspected yes, because he, they did a lot of work to try to figure out where that was exactly. Yeah. So I think the answer is yes, but he didn't say that just out loud.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember the last time we had him on the show, he did mention they were going on another expedition to a different location where another interstellar object was said to have crashed. But yeah, it would make sense to go back to where you actually found stuff and try to get more. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, next was Beatriz. I don't know how to say her last name, Ryan. Villarreal.
Oh, yeah, she's been on the show too. Beatriz Villarreal. Yeah. She was just featured in George Knapp's series too, I saw.
Cool.
Yeah.
She's an astronomy researcher in Stockholm, Sweden, and she works on the EXO project seeking ET objects. And she just talked about what trouble she has as a scientist needing to get her work published on this topic. She said overclassification is the number one problem to what she needs, and that the second problem was that our human instruments are often not properly calibrated, and that are incomplete, and that 69% of the faculty in the US are afraid of the stigma of this topic. National security gets in the way. That won't surprise you. Publishers of these potential papers don't want to touch the topic if she's talking about aliens being here. If she's talking about aliens being far away in the galaxy, they're much more open-minded, which I think speaks volumes to what we were talking about in terms of catastrophic disclosure.
Yeah.
She's watching a string of that behavior that was being described. She says it's a needle in a haystack problem. It always has been, though, hasn't it? And she really liked the work that France and the Galileo Project were doing on this subject. We don't have a scientific institute dedicated to doing this, and we need that, So.
Yeah, right. I know France has Gaipan, I believe it's called. That's been going for a long time now. So France has been on top of this for so long.
So long.
Like, don't sleep on France, guys. Do not sleep on France. I think they could be a huge part of disclosure, especially with all the work being done with the European Space Agency. And then you've got the James Webb Telescope, blah, blah. Like, we're attacking this from all angles, and it can only be a good thing. And opening up the instruments. Like, I mean, look at what happened when we opened the aperture on the sensors, and we found all these Chinese spy balloons.
There you go.
And
that's one thing that Beatriz was commenting on, is that work needs to be accelerated and open. Yeah. And I'm, right there. She's right there with you.
Cool.
Yeah.
I love it. Love it.
Eric Schrock was next. Good guy, good speaker. He's an aerotech guy. And his perspective is really from the position of the little boy working on flying machines. It is fascinating to him how they work, why they work, what doesn't work. And so he obviously wants his hands on UAP in order to figure out propulsion systems and flight dynamics, and to get away from this source we use now, power for planes, where we use fossil fuels to cram air out the back of the plane so that the plane goes forward, old school.
Yeah.
And then the one thing that I heard from him that I thought was fascinating was he posed it as a question. Is there an information field out there we don't know about? Have these beings fused technology with humans or vice versa? You know, what are we watching? And that science, academia, business, and industry, they all have a role to play in this, along with the government.
Interesting. Yeah. There's room for everyone at the table.
And it's going to take everyone, I think.
It is going to take everyone. This is an interesting comment I wanted to bring up from Robert. With all the educated people in the field and population of experiencers in the world, is the government now being pushed into a corner? I mean, it seems that way.
Yeah.
It seems like every, small move towards gradual disclosure, as it's been called, it only comes when the government is pushed into a corner. Like, no, ATIP did not exist. Yes, ATIP did exist. No, that was not that. Yes, that was that. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Who are you going to believe, me or your eyes?
Right. Interesting stuff for sure.
Rizwan Burke was next. Really nice guy. He spoke at length about fundraising, both for capital of interest and for small people, to help in this process. And basically what he described is it's going to have to be a long-term or medium-term kind of process where we give companies what's considered to be smaller amounts of money, like $100,000 for a period of time to work on a thing. And then if that thing can be accomplished in a reasonable period of time, then the venture capitalist is more comfortable coming back with more money. But that it is unreasonable to think that we're just going to give somebody, $100 million and cross our fingers.
Yeah.
It's not going to work like that. So that was basically his message, along with keep the government out of as much as we can, kind of like Avi Loeb doesn't want the government contributing to or involved in his work because it disappears and they classify it.
Yep, we said it, I think, 2 weeks ago, maybe even last week. Like, look what happened with OSAP and the Skinwalker Ranch stuff with Bigelow. Like, we never got that data. Or
it's somewhere, isn't it?
Exactly. And, he even, bought, this is so odd, talk about ethics. He, bought a bunch of MUFON's stuff. And all of that went to him, and it was never made public, which is just...
Yeah.
Sickening, in my opinion. I'm not a fan of Bob Bigelow. I'm just going to say it. I don't think he's really done anything good for the UFO field. And anything he did discover was for him and him alone. But I guess you get what you pay for in this world. Yeah,
that's right. But that's probably a good example of why Avi Loeb is not interested in going that route, and he'll privately fund.
Yes, exactly.
Keep
Exactly.
Out of his business.
Yep.
Well, Jonathan Burke was next. This was really interesting and pretty succinct. I'll just tell it as best as I can.
Okay.
We all have access to AI right now, Chat GPT, those sorts of things. And the problem is this: if I ask AI a question this way or this way or this way, I'm going to get 3 different answers. And 2 of those answers might be false. They're misinformation. He is currently working, he's a co-founder of the SOL Foundation, and he's their director of technology, and his background is robotic intelligence and AI. And he is currently working right now, as we're living and breathing, on eliminating disinformation from the entire body of human history, which is fascinating.
What?
You wake up one morning, you have a cup of coffee, and you get your Pop-Tart, and you say, yeah, today's the day. I've had enough of that. Okay. All right. But here's what he's doing. So they use AI to get out there and comb a subject, and asking in numerous ways is what it sounded like. And then they do the legal work, or the historical work, not legal, on figuring out what they got is false. And then they teach AI to do that. And so in time, they may, in fact, clean up the cesspool of misinformation on, a big plane. But that's what he's working on. And the goal is just to eliminate it. And therefore, you could ask AI almost anything and get a correct answer.
That's interesting. It reminds me of when you go on Facebook now, or Twitter even, or X, whatever the heck you want to call it. And, someone will post misinformation, and underneath it'll say, a consensus of readers have said that this is false. Like, here's the information to the contrary. And I'm like, that much, I'm like, okay, that's a good thing. I'm glad they do that. So,
yeah. Well, they're taking it down to the line. They've had enough. And he says he's doing this because he said he is absolutely certain that AI and UIP are going to converge.
If they haven't already. Yeah. Exactly. Interesting. Yeah. Non-human intelligence.
Yeah, that's right. Non-human intelligence. And the last speaker was Carl Nell. He was talking about just basic problems around, which we don't need to talk about today. We're all really good at identifying the problems. So that was the SOL Foundation meeting over a course of 2 days in San Francisco, California.
Wow. What? Oh, you picked a heck of a first UFO conference to go to, because they ain't like this usually. I will tell you that much.
I'm sure. When do you hear this stuff, right?
No, okay. Personal questions.
Yes.
When it comes to all of this, you also had the opportunity to see James Fox's new film. Is that true?
Okay, I messed this up. I thought I had to have a special ticket to go. Okay. And I didn't get to see it.
Oh, bummer.
I know, but I did talk to him. Nice. He's so thrilled. I guess I can say it, that you're in this movie twice, or in this documentary twice. And he wanted me to be sure and tell you he was so glad that you were there, and he wanted to leave you in, make sure that you were in. So he was very kind, and he's really funny. He's got a fun personality.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's very welcoming. I was very comfortable with him. I didn't speak long, but because he had 1,000 people who were not 1,000. There were 400 attendees, but the room was packed.
So 399.
Yeah, right. Okay, yeah.
He's such a passionate guy. Love James.
Good guy. Yeah. Good guy. Well, and then I guess the only other thing I'd add is I'm a little bit scared of Gary Nolan.
You're Why are you scared of Gary Nolan?
I think he's wound really tightly. There was a speaker who I'd spent 2 days, and with the help of Grant Lavac, Grant, if you're still on, thank you, trying to figure out who this questioner was at one of the microphones. There were microphones on either side of the room. And so they would have a session, and then they would invite people to come ask a question. You had to stay on topic.
No. Q&As are the worst.
They're just the worst. I don't know why we do this to ourselves. There's nothing good. Okay.
I shouldn't say they're the worst, but they can be deadly.
Yeah. And with no disrespect to this one fellow, his question was, is pain real? And it was, I still don't know. And they shut him down and moved him on. I don't know what's going on with that guy. But some fella who I'm pretty sure is the director of the New Paradigm Institute. He's like a Danny Sheehan lookalike, a head full of, curly gray hair.
Okay.
I could only see him in profile in the dark, and he's on the other side of the room. So it took me a little bit to figure out who I thought was asking the question. And he started his question with all this stuff going on in Russia, with Russia using these new scary bombs on the Ukraine. And that was his preference. And then he started to ask his question. And Gary, I don't know where Gary Nolan was. He came flying into the room to the other mic on the other side, which is sort of basically in front of me. First of all, he startled me, just physically, boom. He's like, where did you come from?
He manifested.
And he is yelling into the microphone that, stop that question. This is not a political forum. Cut off his mic, And the guy is trying to tell what his question was. I'm not sure the guy was trying to ask a political question. Did it have a bit of a political setup? It may have, but because it was an issue between two nations. I think he was headed towards NHI and nukes and how they're kind of obsessed with our nukes. But I don't know. And I submit that Gary Nolan doesn't know because he got his mic shut off. So anyway, I'm a little bit scared of him.
Jimmy said it best. Hothead Gary Nolan. He ain't nobody's daddy.
He ain't nobody's daddy.
He was not that guy's
tell
daddy
me to go
either.
talk to Gary Nolan. I'm not going.
Interesting. There's always some drama when it comes to a Q&A at these things. Trust me.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
That was pretty big drama.
Wow. Okay. So kind of to wrap things up then, Suzanne, what surprised you most about your first UFO conference?
I did not think that I was going to be hearing NHI and UAP treated as full on in existence. There were no hypotheticals around it. There were no, well, if this is true, which we all feel like we need to say when we're addressing something that someone releases because we don't have any way to know. It was a given. And at first I thought, is this really this way? And it was. And that was a relief. The feeling to be able to set that aside and just listen and learn from that perspective, I was grateful for it. I would come back next year, but you've got to go.
I'll be there.
You've got to be the front man.
I will be there with bells on just to hear Avi Loeb or Gary Nolan get hot-headed, as it were. Did they announce if there was going to be another one next year yet, or
they didn't say
kind of up in
anything?
the air?
I left a few minutes early, and the last speaker, Mr. Nell, I'd just been in a seat, a theater seat, not a desk or a table or anything, just in a seat, writing on my lap for 2 days. And I just was not getting much out of that. I guess it's possible in the last 10 minutes, which is what I missed, that he made some major announcement, but I think we would have heard it.
You missed disclosure. Carl Nell dropped catastrophic disclosure, and
But I did have a really good Mai Tai in Chinatown here in San Francisco instead. So
now that is a catastrophic.
I had to make a big choice.
I think you made the right choice.
Okay,
Nothing
good.
against Nell in the slightest, but look, it's tough. It's tough to be the last act. I've been there. I've been the last speaker at events, and people get like, these things are just a marathon.
They are. It is intense. My brain, I was going to sleep like at 8 o'clock at night. I had burned all the brain power I had that day.
You're in overdrive for sure. And it doesn't matter if you're a speaker or an attendee, like the amount of brain and sorry, I thought I just saw something in my kitchen, which was really creepy. Oh no. Oh no. The orbs are here. Someone call Ryan Graves.
Knock.
Anyways, the amount of brain energy you use on either end of a conference is it's a lot. It really is a lot.
But it was fascinating. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I loved being right there, listening to every word and thinking it through with them. And I think it'll be really interesting to look back on what they said today in a few years. So many have goals for 2025. I think it'll be interesting that to come back and look to see. And I'll just hang on to the outline, and we'll peek back as things get said, and we can know.
Absolutely. We've got your 50 pages of notes that we will put into our AI system, and we will get this somewhere in the live stream AI going for sure. Awesome, Suzanne. Well, let's go up into the chat a little bit, and then we will close things out. 2.5 hours. My God.
Oh my gosh.
We got to get out of here. Poor Bill.
I know. God love him.
I'm going to go to see if I missed any of the start stuff.
Bill is, by the way, while you look, he is the arch enemy of these self-driving cars called Waymos that are out here. I don't know if you've seen them. They're driverless cars, but they're taxis.
Yes.
And he is freaking them all out. He's one of those pedestrians who will step down off the curb to wait.
Chrissy.
He's their worst nightmare.
Oh, those things freak me out. Chrissy sent me texted me a video of one of them, and I'm like, you would not catch me dead in one of those.
I know. It is something.
Not happening. Yeah. Oh, Jimmy asked, were audience questions allowed or recorded? There were Q&As, so yeah.
There were Q&As after every speaker, unless somebody ran over. And then they might get one question out there. But I will tell you, with regard to the questions, they were quick to cut somebody off. And it wasn't just the guy asking about Russia, Ukraine, whatever. The minute someone went off topic for the speakers that had just finished, they were shut down. Please move on. Sorry, we can't do that now. I can talk with you about that later privately, which I appreciated, because
for sure,
these were questions that the rest of us would have been asking.
Exactly. Like, that's what you do in a private setting, or if let's say there's a vendor room or they're selling books, like that's the time to do that. Like, don't make 400 other people deal with your is pain real moral quandary or whatever. Like, I'm sorry, it's just not the place or the time.
I mean, I'm sure he had a real thing going on in his life, and I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I am too.
Right. He made the speakers uncomfortable and the room uncomfortable.
Yeah, you can't do that. I'm sorry, it's just not.
Yeah.
Anyways, awesome. Well, I'm glad it was a eventful event, insightful event, dramatic event, everything a UFO conference should be. That's awesome. Well, I'm going to start to close things out, Suzanne.
Go ahead.
I've kept you so long. Everyone in the chat is thanking you.
Oh, they're so sweet.
Such an awesome recap.
And thank you to those of you who reached out, like on Messenger or wherever, Twitter. As I was there, it was fun to talk with you all and give you little pieces as things went along. I appreciate it.
It was so cool. I felt like I was there with you. You were like messaging me like,
oh man, you're going to want to know this.
Yeah, you're going to want to, you'll never guess what just happened. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Very cool.
Awesome. Well, if anyone wants to find what you're up to, where can they find you?
I'm Suzanne Westerman Landers on Facebook, and I'm Suzanne Landers on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram and Blue Sky. And if you find Ryan, you find me, because I'm commenting or whatever right underneath there. And if you just need to get the details straight from me, send me a messenger or whatever, and I'll respond to you. I promise you're not bothering.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for being so accessible. And I want to thank again all of our super chatters tonight, which includes you, Suzanne. Thank you. Spooky Boo, Good Morning UFO, James Craig, The Biologist. Thank you so much, guys, for donating to our new microphone fund.
We're going to get there.
We're getting there. We're slowly getting there. And thank you, Suzanne, for that incredible recap. And we're going to close things out, guys. But before I do that, dropping in a little under an hour here in the UK. How do I get this back on screen? There we go. The one and only Robert Powell joined me this week for the Somewhere in the Skies podcast. We talked all about his new book about UFOs, his work with the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, and we went all across the spectrum: UFO hearings, AARO report, all of that good stuff. So please check it out. It's a fascinating interview. I had a great time. We got some awesome interviews coming up in the future. Like I said, NASA UAP study team member Paulo Bontempi will be joining us again. Who else? James Fox. James Fox will be coming on to talk all about his new documentary, The Program. So be on the lookout for that and everything in between. Like, subscribe here on YouTube if you can. With the podcast, guys, please download, like, subscribe, rate, review, all that good stuff. It all helps us gain more visibility and find new viewers and listeners. So once again, I'm going to thank all of you for joining us on what was a very long but very insightful episode of Somewhere in the Live Stream. I had a blast tonight. Might be the half bottle of Centauri whiskey, but that is what it is. But thank you, guys. Thank you, as always, for being here. And we will see you next week for another live stream. And we will leave you with the mantra, as always, and that is keep your feet on the ground, but never stop searching somewhere in the skies. Have a great night. Thank you, Suzanne.
There's nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide at all.